Hello and welcome to another edition of Books and Things. My name is Kenny and I am the senior pastor of Hickory Grove Presbyterian Church in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. Today we are going to be looking at Timothy Witmer's book, The Shepherd Leader at Home. I like to sprinkle in some books into this channel that aren't strictly speaking academic, aren't very heavy, but address different concerns, practical concerns in terms of productivity, the Christian life, and in this case specifically, biblical and practical wisdom for how husbands and fathers should lead their home. Whitmer is a PCA pastor. He is a professor of practical theology at Westminster Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania. He is the author of several books on ministry and leadership, the Shepherd Leader, the Shepherd's Toolbox. And this little book was an excellent read. It's concise. It's only about 150 pages, so it's a quick read. It's very rich in biblical content and wisdom. It's practical. It has discussion questions and a lot of hand holding, for lack of a better term, to help men apply the principles he teaches in the book. I would highly recommend it for any husband, any father, even any wife and mother who or aspiring wife and mother, right, who would like to cultivate a vision for what a godly man looks like, a man worth marrying. This isn't going to be a review so much as a riff on the book and its contents. In the book, we find a very simple structure of four parts: knowing, leading, providing, and protecting. The first part is all about knowing your family. In order to lead your family, you need to know them. And to know them, you need to be with them. You need to spend time with them. You need to put in the time. That includes both quantity and quality, right? It's one thing to plan special trips and craft wonderful memories, and that's great. But it's another thing to just be there so that whenever something comes up, whenever an opportunity to speak into some aspect of your wife or your children's lives comes up, you're there and you're ready to speak. He focuses two chapters, one on the wife and one on the children. With our wives, we need to communicate. Groundbreaking advice there, right? Communicate with your wife. But Whitmer is great at just kind of walking you through what that looks like. Listening well, right? Speaking intentionally, measuring our words, aiming our words, so to speak, at our wives' hearts. And I'm thankful he focuses on praying together. There is no more intimate form of communication into which we can enter with our wives than prayer before the Lord. Moving to the kids, we see a lot of the same stuff, but he especially focuses on one time. And I appreciate this because as a father of four, one time is a very difficult thing to score with my kids. It's easier with my son because he's older, he stays up later, we do different father-son things together. But with my three girls, I have to fight to find that intentional time, but it's a fight that we as fathers have to engage in. Next, second part of the book, he talks about leading the family. Leading means stepping up to lead, right? Actually taking ownership of your responsibility as a leader in the home. But it also means vision. It means knowing where you're going, casting a vision for the future of your family, dialing in the things that matter, the things that you care most about, the things that you want to devote your attention to, and being intentional about heading in that direction. But when it comes to husbands and wives, Whitmer acknowledges and does a very good job of biblically sustaining the very unpopular notion that husbands are indeed called to lead their wives. This is something that we just can't get around, men. We're called to lead our wives. Yes, leadership, at times it looks like partnership, and when it's healthy, it ought to look like partnership. But at the end of the day, there is one head in the home, and the husband is called to be that head. With children, leadership means leading, yes, in the words you speak, in the principles you espouse, but it also means leading by example, leading by practical model, practical display, not just telling your kids what they ought to do and where they ought to go, but showing it to them by way of your own life. Third part, Whitmer talks about providing for your family. Of course, this is first of all material, right? Men, we need to work diligently. We need to earn for our families. And I know there are lots of different marginal cases, and you know, for whatever reason, maybe the husband can't work, or maybe it makes more sense for the wife to be working at time. I'm not discounting all of that. So, please don't hear me as being overly narrow here. But by and large, in general, men, we're called to provide for our families materially, work diligently in that endeavor. But here's the balance piece. Don't work so hard. Don't work so excessively that it compromises your ability to be present with your family. Because as much as we are called to provide materially for our families, we are called to provide spiritually for them. How do we provide spiritually for our family? Well, in order to provide, we need to possess. So, first and foremost, that means going before the Lord in receiving, being strong in your walk with the Lord, being filled by his grace, being closely connected to Christ, being alive in him in the fullest experiential sense of that word, having your cup filled so that it can run over with your family. So, with the provision you receive, you also become a conduit, you become a channel, you become an instrument of God's grace in your family. What does it look like practically? Family devotions, times of prayer, times of training, words of specific and measured encouragement. Something that Whitmer very helpfully shares in his book, specifically when it comes to family devotions, are a number of principles, 6 principles that I found very helpful. First, be realistic. Don't expect to spend an hour every weeknight with your family doing devotions. Second, be systematic. Create a rhythm. Stick to it. Third, be flexible. Seek patterns, not perfection. Fourth, be consistent. 15 minutes 4 times a week is much better than 1 hour haphazardly every week or every other week. Be interactive. Dialogue. Don't preach. Involve the family. Lead them along through the text. Ask questions. Challenge them to come to their own conclusions and to creatively apply the text to their own lives. Finally, be real. Lead by example. Don't be a hypocrite. Don't go on and on and on about patience in your family devotions, and then for the rest of the day, walk on a razor wire, right? Lose your patience constantly with the kids. Be real. That might be the most important one. Finally, the fourth part, protect your family. When it comes to the marriage, he focuses on the man specifically. He focuses on us, and he deals with sexual sin. I mean, what do you expect in reading a book about husbands and fathers and how to lead in the home and how to protect their families? Sexual sin, dealing with that malady of the heart, because a weakness in our eyes leads to a weakness in our hearts, leads to a weakness in our actions. And why would we risk our marriages? Why would we risk our family? Why would we create an ugly black mark on the lives of our wives and children for the sake of a fleeting sexual desire, fleeting sensual pleasure? That's us. That's our marriages. How about our kids? Proactively in protecting our kids, we protect them by setting boundaries. Don't go to these places. Don't talk to these kinds of people. Don't engage in these sort of behaviors. Don't look at these things. Don't read these kinds of books, right? We set the expectations, we set the boundaries. That's all proactive. How about reactive? What happens when our kids transgress the boundaries that we set for them? There's discipline, right? There's discipline for when kids cross the lines. And Whitmer very helpfully shares his 7-step ABC approach to discipline. I really appreciated this as a father who struggles to be consistent with how I apply discipline. The first, ask the Lord for wisdom. The second, be sure the line's been crossed. The third, confront and clarify. Fourth, deliver the promised consequences. Fifth, explain additional consequences. Sixth, forgive completely. And seventh, graciously restore and move on. I just find that to be a very helpful procedure to walk through in order to first ask the Lord to help, to verify what has happened, to engage what has happened, to actually deliver consequences, to talk about what further consequences there might be in terms of seeking forgiveness, restoring that which is broken, all these sorts of things, forgiving, graciously restoring, It's really helpful to have some sort of practical and principled rail to run on when we think about how we engage our kids in discipline. So, in summary, this was a great book. I would highly recommend it. Men, it will take you 2 or 3 hours to read on a Sunday afternoon. It'll get you thinking intentionally about how you've been leading your family, or maybe how you've been failing to lead your family. And most importantly, it will give you biblical and practical rails to run on in order to do better in the future for God's glory and for the good of your family. Thanks for joining me again today. I will look forward to being with you again.